say hello and start. There it is. And start going through the agenda. Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie. I'm filling in for Tony today. We've got a pretty packed agenda, and and we have some guest speakers today. So I will start by passing it to Ashley for roll call.
Hi, everybody. I'm just going to run through the list really quick. So we know Tony's out. Is Jared Murray here today?
No, Jared Murray is not here. But I noticed I put my hand on my chin and I was like doing the total John Carp Evans, so I pulled my hand down real quick. But yes, I'm here.
Great. All right, John Carp Evans.
I'm here.
He's definitely here.
Great. Frank? Is Frank here yet?
Yes, Frank Mondu, Washington County Addictions. I'm here.
Perfect. Thank you. Stephanie? Stephanie Cameron, I believe you're here. And Amanda Esquivel.
Amanda's out.
Got it. Steve Sandin.
I'm here.
Hello. Stephanie Mendenhall. All right, Stephanie Castaneda. All right, Todd Nicholson.
I'm here.
Thank
And I'm
you.
going to have to leave a little bit early. So
Okay, thank you so much for the update. We're happy to have you while we have you. Stephanie Sloan.
Same here.
Great. Ed Smith.
I'm here.
Hello. All righty. Craig Mosbeck. Brian Hodges.
I'm here.
Great. And Sharon Fitzgerald.
Sharon's out.
Great. And we have hit quorum. Did I miss anybody? Great. Okay.
Thank you, Ashley. I also forgot to mention that anybody here from the public, please wait till the end of the meeting for public comment. I will pass the meeting now to Will for director's updates.
Okay, one sec. Okay, hey everyone, good to see you this afternoon. Annalise is also out, and so I'm going to read through the director's updates today. So we'll start with the Commission's Prevention Committee. So they're continuing discussion regarding development of a primary prevention center of excellence, and they've received updates on implementation of House Bill 3321, primary prevention assessment work. The Health and Safety Interventions Committee, the committee meeting schedule has changed to the last Tuesday of each month. They're continuing discussions regarding naloxone access, redistribution, and utilization, and they've reviewed issues related to expired and soon to expire naloxone and potential strategies to improve redistribution and efficient use of that naloxone. The Youth Addiction Alliance, the Oregon Youth Addiction Alliance held a 6-month accomplishments review and celebration. Alliance members are collaborating with the Recovery Committee to develop best practices and guidelines for recovery community centers serving the youth, and we're about to hear about that shortly. The Treatment Committee was working on designing their provider landscape assessment to be able to identify measurable baselines for various aspects of the treatment work plan. They hope to be able to measure the impact of the plan by re-administering the survey in 2029. They are hoping to begin receiving responses in the fall and sharing results in December. Then there's the local opioid settlement board we'd like to mention. Oregon Health Authority is developing the next request for grant applications. The anticipated release is scheduled for fall 2026. Funding will consist of a single round of one-time awards totaling about $13 million. Reminder that the local opioid settlement collaborative continues to meet monthly to support coordination with local partners. And that's what we have for the director's update.
Thanks, Will. All right, I do believe the next slide is the introduction of our presenters today. And so that's OYA, or Oregon Youth Addictions Alliance. And I believe, if I'm correct, it is Wes who's leading that.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. Hi, everybody. My name's Wes Rivers. I'm a senior policy analyst with the Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission. So I'm Will's counterpart. For the folks who don't know me, I'm Will's counterpart who supports our prevention committee and our youth committee, which is known as the Oregon Youth Addiction Alliance. And I have a few of my committee members here today who would like to present a document that we put together over the last few months as part of our overall strategy around youth third spaces and creating uh, recovery-oriented spaces for young people. So last year we developed a strategy in consultation with Will in developing and proliferating spaces that support youth recovery on top of some of the work that we're doing in the education space around youth recovery schools. That kind of led us to and knowing the parallel work that was going around the statutory definition, making sure that we provided you all with recommendations that are supportive of youth-specific spaces. So some of this is definitional, some of it is what we consider standards, but we leave it up to you all to kind of help us figure out how that lands. But these are the things that were most important to young people when discussing their experiences with youth recovery spaces and also understanding what is possible in the future. So, Ashley, if you could make me co-host so I could just pop these up, and then I wanted to let Maddie, Cal, and Gio know that y'all are we had some last minute emergencies, so you three are up for the sections, if that's all right.
I do not have I cannot make you co-host. I think Will has to do
Oh,
that.
sorry about that, Ashley.
Okay.
One sec. Okay, should be co-host now.
Awesome. And so I have three of our youth members, Cal, Maddie, and Gio, and I believe Maddie's up. So Maddie, if you just want to introduce yourself, and then we can walk through these, and I'll have them up on the screen for you.
Hi, I'm Maddie. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a member of the Oregon Youth Addiction Alliance. Today I'm going to be talking about what happened, structure, security, and boundaries, and why they're important. Staff and mentors must be trained on working with youth, healthy and ethical boundaries, and supporting youth adult partnerships in recovery. And the reason this is so important is because, especially when working with youth, those lines can be crossed in ways that sometimes the youth don't understand is wrong or don't know how to feel safe communicating that, something has happened to them, and they could be afraid of retaliation or just not even understand that it should be something that's reported. So everybody should be trained on healthy and ethical boundaries. Youth should be offered onboarding training that covers similar content on working with mentors, healthy and ethical boundaries, and engaging in youth adult partnerships and recovery. All centers must have trauma-informed protocols, processes, and support for youth. Reporting unethical behavior and abuse. Staff members and youth would need to be fully informed of protocol and reporting processes. All centers must need to clearly define and create boundaries eligibility of access to space programming of age cohorts 14 through 18 or 18 through 24, for examples. Boundaries is something that I've seen crossed multiple times throughout getting help in recovery, and it's always been really scary for the kids and adults who have seen those boundaries be crossed, or been a part of it, because you don't always know what to do or you don't know how to report something, and sometimes it doesn't feel safe for you to report something. So having a safe space where you can, report what's happened, or just, honestly, just having a safe space and not being scared of retaliation would have been the biggest thing for me and my friends, was just, being scared to report something, um, because boundaries had been crossed, and maybe the person who crossed your boundaries said something to you. That's happened. I've seen it happen to one of my friends. Boundaries were crossed with them, and the person who crossed those boundaries threatened them. So they were afraid of retaliation. And there needs to be a way, in a space where kids can feel safe to actually recover. And if they don't have that, then they're not going to want to be a part of whatever's happening. So safety and boundaries, I'd say, is one of the biggest things for me. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Maddie. That was great. I am gonna move it over to Cal around the access component of what you all put forward.
Yeah, thank you. I'm pretty new to OEA, so I don't want to. I'll just add kind of what my thoughts are, but I'm kind of just jumping on the bandwagon, and this is a lot of work that I'm speaking on that has been done for the past couple months that I'm really excited to share with y'all. So I'm talking about access in our recovery centers. The goal that we've kind of come to consensus about is how to make this more long-term sustainable, and how to encourage access not only for youth to feel comfortable engaging in services, but also how to transition them when they leave services and kind of set them up for long-term success and self-efficacy. So a lot of this includes being integrated in the community. This could look like being in schools, general outreach, local opportunities where youth can find recovery resources in their local area. A lot of people have to go to Portland for addiction resources, and Eugene's got some great ones, but it's also, there's just not that much access, especially in rural communities. So we're really having a lot of ideas for making them not only accessible but also normalized. Like, when I grew up in school, we didn't have any recovery resources, so it's really amazing to see that this is something Oregon is really focusing attention on. So that'd be really wonderful. Kind of just break down barriers for people to reach out for support. So this not only looks like warm handoffs to resources, but also when youth are leaving residential, how to support those individuals once they receive resources. I think residentials can be really amazing. And it's great with the routine, it's great with the groups, it's great with starting people off, and then it ends. And there you got like 90 days, for example, of some really amazing support, some counseling, and then you're back home. You're back with your friends, you're back with your school, you're back with everything, and you might not have been given some resources. So I think not only providing the plan for giving youth skills while in residential or treatment, and providing them like not only learning how to build their own routine, but how to have a successful youth to adult transition. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but we've talked a little bit about access to essentials and hygiene, some documentation, talking about specific youth identity and culture. I think Brady is a fantastic example in introducing some culturally specific programs is also kind of amazing and would be great for encouraging that access. And then the goal really with engagement activities such as arts, outdoors, video games, and really also potentially bringing in family into long-term recovery is how to make this not only successful, but also sustainable and realistic. Those are, I think, are really important facets for, yes, we can provide some really great skills, and also how do we make this available always in these communities and what is really going to work. And I think bringing in outdoor activities and video games that are more specific to youth and that they're more willing to kind of engage in third spaces and with therapeutic environments is really an amazing route to explore. So that was a lot, but thank you for following along with that.
Thanks, Cal. That was awesome. Gio is going to talk a little bit about governance.
Hi everyone, my name is Gio, one of the OEM members. So let's get started. So this governance section has a lot to do from transitioning the control of the group of the dynamics from a provider to the patient. So our first point was governance structures that include youth participants and peers, and in organization decision making and co-design space and programming. So I think the point we were trying to get across here was that it shouldn't only be providers making the rules, doing what, setting the boundaries. It should be the patients. It should be the people that are actively involved and engaging uh, in the in the program, I guess. And also, we want to include that a lot of the youth actually lead the programming instead of the provider. I've seen a lot of times where youth are completely disengaged just because, it's an older person talking and they have nothing to do with it. They had no choice and whether or not they were even like gonna say anything with it, and then just throws off the dynamics. There's no engagement. And we think it's very important to be able to have this, kind of 50-50 split between, or even 70-30 split between the patient and the provider so that patients have more autonomy of their programming. We also said that they need more leadership roles and leadership development support for youth. So this can include like job opportunities. This could include training, anything that they could get their hands on that will help them get a foot in the door and help them build skills to become more involved in their community or even within the program that they're in. Um, Lastly, I think this last one is kind of the same, but youth-driven policies around person-centered care, autonomy, consent to services, and confidentiality within applicable state and federal law. So I think the main point we were trying to get with this last one was that, there's a lot of youth who are in recovery centers who do not want to be there, and that's completely fine. I think, I've seen working as a peer mentor at different recovery centers that there's someone who doesn't want to be there, and there's someone who does want to be there, and like that person that doesn't want to be there kind of like not destroys, but it disrupts the other person's recovery, and it just creates this unsafe environment that we want to get rid of. So, another point to talk about this is that, a lot of these youth don't want to be here because their parents enforce it on them. So we believe that there should be a policy that, if a youth is explicitly stating that they do not want to be there, then they shouldn't be there, regardless of what their parents think. And there should be a confidentiality between their parents and the patient, so that whether we can avoid any trouble that we don't really see. And I think that's just kind of it, Wes.
Thanks so much, Gio. I also just want to acknowledge that our one of our adult members is here, and I can only see one. So Martin, is there anything you wanted to add from your perspective based on what the youth said?
No, I just loved it. They spoke from, it sounds like, some personal experiences, certainly, when Maddie spoke, and so just highlighting the importance of kind of centering youth voices and really amplifying, I would say, youth voices in the structuring and all the programmatic components is critical, and that's what we do within that committee. And coming up with policy proposals. And so, yeah, I'm just proud of the youth who presented today. So thank you all.
We can open it up, Stephanie, if that's cool, for questions.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't necessarily have questions. This is Brian Hodges. I just want to say good job to all of you presenting that information. Um, I love the way you incorporated the importance of boundaries and safety for the youth. I'm the program manager of a youth residential facility, treating kids 12 to 17. One of the things I noted when you're reading that is educating the youth as they come in around their rights and giving examples around boundary violations and what that might look like and the feelings that that might bring up for them, whether it be fear of reporting, and then putting clear youth language in how to make a report. Right, a lot of our policies and procedures end up getting written, and they look like they're written by doctors. So making sure the language is written in youth language that spells out to them is one of the things that. And then I really love Gio's presentation on youth-centered, youth-driven services. I think that is so important. We drive that home here at Rimrock Trails. We have a youth advisory council that has a budget, and they get to participate and dictate how things go. And I will say that we see a lot more buy-in and success and longevity in the program when the youth have a real say, not just a chance to voice their opinion and then go unheard or undocumented or unacted on. And so I just love that that's the direction this is going. So makes me smile.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that that was great, Maddie, how you shared the boundary thing. And also that I think really to speak on that, like to vet the staff that'll be providing the services to the youth and educating the youth on what appropriate boundaries look like. You know, I was unfortunately one of those ones that had to live through that experience with somebody, and it's just so great that you're putting this into you know, proposed planning, because that it is so needed to make sure that as a parent, like I could trust the staff that's going to be supporting my child, and also that my child knows what appropriate boundaries look like and feels safe receiving services, because there's nothing worse than getting care and support from an adult who's supposed to be supporting you, only to turn out that this person is creating a toxic experience. And for some kids, that might mean not returning to services when you're experiencing that. So great job.
I would like to add one more thing. I've seen this way too much in my time, and that's adults not taking youth concerns about mentors or teachers seriously. So when those reports come in, them being brushed off, which I don't think is safe for the youth. And if they do get that voice and the confidence to voice their concerns, that it should seriously be listened to, because I've seen it way too many times where youth will be like, "Hey, this happened to me. This made me really uncomfortable. I don't think this person is safe to be around," and I've seen those get brushed off. And it takes so much confidence for a youth to talk about a mentor or a teacher or something if an experience has happened. So just taking those voices like into account, and like just seeing how much courage it takes for them to say something. Like really, I just hate to see it again, because I've been one of the youth that has reported something about an adult and not had anything happen until another youth reported it. Which means that if they would have taken my report into account, maybe that other youth wouldn't have had that happen. That experience wouldn't have happened to them. And so just really taking those reports seriously.
Thank you, Maddie. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Maddie, thank you so much for saying that. I just wanted to encourage you to keep saying that in rooms full of adults and grown-ups, whether they work in the field or not. that has been happening since we were all young folks. So just keep speaking up. I just wanted to encourage that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
A question. Do we have a practical pathway for these recommendations to be implemented? Because what I'm hearing is a lot of time has been put into this, and I feel that we have a responsibility to make sure that these are being implemented somewhere. And so I'm just wondering, because I genuinely don't know what that would look like.
I can talk a bit about that. So yes, and I think the end goal here is, so we have our recovery center definition that we voted in, right? And the plan is to add a youth component to that definition. It's like we have two paragraphs right now. Maybe that looks like a third paragraph for youth, or a third and fourth paragraph for youth. And I think in between now and our next meeting, we'll have some discussions, some wordsmithing, deciding which pieces of what was just shared are going to belong in that definition, and such, and how to word it. And at the next available time, it will be brought back to this committee to be voted on into that existing definition. I totally blanked in director's updates that usually we take a month off in the summer, and that's going to be in July. So I do think that we can expect that to be brought back in August.
Stephanie, the other thing we're thinking about, so like, right, some of this is definitional and some of it's like standard, right? Like, so like what we would expect in like a program. And so as we work with OHA and others and they are designing programs, we would put this forward as kind of the official standards from, oh yeah. And with y'all's endorsement, if y'all endorse these, we would say, oh yeah, and the recovery committee say, if you're going to do programming or you're going to put funding out there for youth recovery center, this is you should hold to account organizations to these standards. So that's another way, another lever.
Yeah, I think it's really important. So I'm an adult who was in youth services in the 90s, and I don't know how many people here know what was happening in youth services in the 90s. It sounds like, potentially Stephanie does. But because of the things that were happening, we saw a major decrease in youth access. So what I see happening here is an opportunity to really start building up youth services again, and the things that youth are sharing with us, like they seem like I hate to say it, like common sense for adult providers to understand, especially because of the history of youth services. So I think it's really, really important, if we want to continue to make sure youth are safe and that they are healing and recovering in a space that is appropriate and safe, that we take these things into consideration, because they definitely weren't in the past.
So I'm wondering, Will, you and I can work together to kind of figure out something to present back, both committees in August. I'm wondering if like these full standards, if we could get an endorsement from the recovery committee today. I know it's not we didn't agenda this, so like I don't know if that's possible. So if we don't, we can do the full thing, like a full package in August, so that OEA can start to transmit with other programs as they start to develop things for funding for SUPTers and other things. We can say, this is what we expect. I don't know. Well, what do you think? Or we can,
So an endorsement today on that document just presented would be helpful.
yeah, for just the standards. And I think we could do that. I think we could do that in August. We could do it like a two-phase vote, right? So y'all could vote on the full definition and then we could vote on the standards as well. So the committee has time to take these in a little bit more.
That sounds great. What do you think, Steph? Does that sound? Yeah. Makes sense to me.
Yes. I can't think of any argument otherwise. Well, actually, would we have to vote on an endorsement today then to move through for August? Because if so, that's an Ashley question, because I don't remember whether we had a quorum. I'm so sorry.
We do have quorum.
That was the only hiccup I could see.
And I can run a quick vote off of the attendance list if we need to do that.
John, do you have something?
Yeah, I was curious if we could get these documents or see, I guess, I'd just be curious to look a little more in depth into it. It's awesome work. I'm super excited as someone that got clean as a teenager. This is huge. But I would just like to be able to visually review it more if that's possible.
Absolutely. So what we'll do is maybe, and we didn't agenda vote today, so like I think I would probably feel more comfortable with like y'all having time with it. So we can send the document. Will and I can work on the definition. We can bring the definition back to both committees, and then we'll do all of the endorsements in August, if that makes sense. And oh, also, hi, Megan Smith. Like, I did not realize that was you when you, well, just that when you were off camera. So, Megan is another one of our members as well.
And for those who don't know, like we have a recovery committee definition, and separately there's also work being done on recovery community center best practices and standards. So I think that's kind of mirroring what you're getting at, Wes. Yeah, okay. Cool.
Well, that leads me to another question, which is, are these standards going to be included in the best practices that are being published around recovery community centers? And are youth centers being represented in those best practices that are being published? I know that's outside of the ADPC. I was just wondering if you knew if that was happening.
I can carry the message that these are being worked on for youth. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and your effort and all the work everybody put into that. Was there anything else? I think our next topic is the really, really interesting and fun topic of data. So I'm not sure who's all excited and ready for that one.
It doesn't sound like you are. Come on.
Oh, data! Data's so important. I was just trying to put some little jokey jokes out there.
Okay. You want me to go ahead and bring that up?
Sure, I think so.
Cool. Okay. So, data. That's just our agenda. So, last time we met in May, we had just sort of like kind of like an open data discussion. We kicked around a few like different types of measures and stuff, and just kind of got a feeler for where people were at with measurement, outcomes, data, statistics, and reporting. So the takeaways from that meeting were that the committee wants to track a wide variety of data in a unified way. And when I say the committee, I should probably say that the directors of the recovery community centers are the ones that were, you know, they're the ones that will be doing or that want the tracking. And this was supported by the committee as a whole. Committee wants grant reporting to be more uniform. Committee wants a unified way to show the work of RCCs to the community, and feels that there's more of an emphasis placed on the work when we share our work together. Um, Recovery capital is at the heart of our definition of a recovery community center, and it's also at the heart of the comprehensive plan. And so the committee was interested in a standard way of tracking recovery capital. There's a measure, a screening instrument called the BARC 10. And, we also want to be sure that we give community centers the space to report unique data that exists for one, community center in this geography or in this culturally specific location. We want to be sure everyone gets a spot to share their individual work as well. Okay, today's goal is just like a report back on initial gathering of information. So what was asked of last time is that maybe like 4 or 5 of us get together and really like just kind of hash out some measures that everyone seems to be collecting, talk about different types of data and tracking that people are doing. So we did. We met with, I think 5 of us that met together. So we're going to report back that work. And then just kind of discuss thoughts moving forward. All right. So this slide shows sort of 3 buckets these distinct buckets that kind of came up in our conversations. Um, you know, the first thing at the Recovery Community Center that's being measured are like center measures. Like center measures are things like engagements, number of social activities, a number of participants, mutual support meetings, number of participants in those, connection to community resources, maybe referrals. These are all data really important to the center. They're not necessarily linked to anyone we can identify. They're sort of like these aggregate numbers. Like there were 47 engagements last week or something like that, 7 activities, this type of activity. So then at the Peer Center, there's the group of participants that are actually enrolled in peer services. And this is a little bit different, tracking those because they can be tracked kind of over time as that person or those who, engage multiple times come in and there are updates and such. Maybe you can start asking questions about like, progress towards self-identified goals. I know all of this stuff, I know so many people already track. This is almost like just getting on the same page about how we can kind of present it together. But anyway, when it comes to the enrolled participants, it becomes easier to track the data over time. In that piece, we could also potentially introduce that BARC 10 screening instrument I was talking about to get at measuring recovery capital. I got a slide on that later on. Something that this third box, the one that's kind of in the green, is the point in time survey. And we hadn't, maybe we talked a little bit about it last time, but the idea is that at like any given center, maybe for like a week or so, everyone who comes into that center, give them a survey to fill out, and you can ask much more in-depth sorts of questions on that. And I know, again, many centers do something like this. There's going to be a whole slide on that later on, but we can ask things like treatment status, demographics, geography, commute, stuff like that. To those people that aren't actually enrolled, we can get information from the people that aren't enrolled. That's the idea there. So those first 2 boxes is like ongoing collection, right? That's just stuff y'all track all the time. And then point in time, it's like once per period. Maybe it's once a year or once every 2 years. I don't know. That's the kind of stuff we kind of gotta hash out to get moving. Just simply put, you got those center measures, the peer services measures, and the point in time. And together it's just, a way to reporting on this as a way to connect to the definition we came up with and just add this really rich data with the point in time survey. It's like taken all together, it's a way to show the community, what RCCs do. One way I've been thinking about this maybe is like, so this framework might be adapted for like grant reporting. Like if you're reporting on different grants and need to report like slightly different things or something, maybe this can, sort of span across and, eliminate some duplication um, the other thing I was thinking about is it'd be neat to have a report that's like, in my opinion, I'm curious what you think about like a report that maybe on the first page is just like collective measures, like all out of the however many RCCs in Oregon, there were like 39,000 engagements or something last year, and there were um, people engaged in this many activities. So like that first page is like collective, and then every RCC that reported into that gets to talk about their own RCC and like the pages after. Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Quick question. And at this point, you're talking about the final report that's like presented to the state, correct? Like, what would the final report look like after everybody's participated in all this data collection? And that would kind of look like a front page talking about all the work that we're doing within this.
Yeah. Sort of, it would be like our report. We could show it to whoever we want, so yeah.
I like
It's not mandated right now, this is not mandated. It's sort of like we're seeing benefit, so that's why,
I like that, Will. I like how excited you get about data. Like I get excited about data too, for future grants and stuff like that. But the one thing that is kind of I'm wondering about is why the bookworm is gone. Like why oh no, your head is just in the way of the bookworm. The bookworm is amazing. Yes, that is the data worm. Let's just call it the data worm.
I gotta move it. Yeah.
No, I appreciate everything. Appreciate everything that you do and bring to the table. And like some things that people don't get excited about, you get excited about it, and it just kind of pushes the envelope further. And you always come up with these really creative ideas. So, just really valued to what we do, and you do it because you believe that it's bigger than you, and you really want to be of service of the people. And sometimes that's hard to find. Sometimes we get lost in our jobs, and it's just jobs and so I value you as being a part of this. I just wanted to, take the time to say that, Will. Like, just really appreciate all your hard work and everything you do to put this together, man.
Thanks so much, Jared. I really appreciate that. Yeah, y'all make it so much easier. So thank you. Okay. Stephanie and I were kind of chuckling prior to this call because we're going to put the recovery definition up again. And yes, I did, because I know some people might not have seen it. And I think the point, though, is that all of the reporting we've talked about fits directly into this definition. And that's why there's that extra sort of strength behind it. All of the bold phrases, that's sort of like those are the pieces that can be measured. And sometimes it's just a checkbox. Like it's still a measurement. Checkbox can, something I'd really like to focus in on is darn it. Sorry about that. I'm in presentation mode, so I can't highlight. The piece in the bottom paragraph that says build recovery capital. And so it says build recovery capital by all this stuff, right? And so really the heart of this definition is that building that recovery capital. So we've really put that at the forefront, and it's the heart of the recovery-oriented system of care that our plan is built around as well. So just keeping that in mind. I'm going to move on to these are the actual like potential measures that that smaller group sort of hashed out. And I'll just keep saying I know everyone's familiar with this, collects it and stuff. But sort of what we highlighted out of the definition was we'll put a check mark next to non-residential, peer operated, paid director, free of charge, linked to culturally specific services when available. Um, and then also that the participants are indeed those experiencing challenges or obstacles consistent with recovery from a SUD or in remission from those. Um, some measures for like general utilization, just basic number of contacts, engagements, encounters, drop-in hours. Um, Measurements for that peer support portion of the definition. Some of these are center level and some are individual, but we got recovery capital, number of peers, number of participants engaged in peer support, number of mentor-mentee encounters, progress towards self-identified goals, length of time in recovery, asking the question, is abstinence part of your program, strength of relationships, and reach of recovery network. We got things like social activities, number of activities and types, number of participants, navigating resources and connection to social services, tracking encounters for things related to employment, housing, self-sufficiency, healthcare, school. Someone made a good point that it could be like tally marks and just adding stuff up, or it could be like testimony. And this next slide just kind of goes on. Again, each of these being a piece of that definition. Number, types, participants, mutual support meetings, all kinds of employment resource measures, advocacy, education. So that measures like connections with community advocacy groups, like if someone maybe went to advocacy day or something like that, and also self-advocacy, and we can kind of get at that piece in the point in time questions. Volunteer opportunities, outreach, and supplies. Two that sort of showed up in between last meeting, this meeting are outreach and supplies. Outreach, we're kind of thinking like, does this fit into encounters? And maybe this is just sort of like a list of types of outreach here. And then supplies, the naloxone is what came up, but I'm also wondering what else could be measured along the lines of supplies.
Yeah, I was gonna pause right there just real quick and like, how's everybody feeling about these measures of data collection? Do they seem pretty standard? Does it seem like, oh gosh, I don't know how I'm gonna get that information? How would I even collect that information? Is there anybody who feels like this isn't aligned with what they're already doing, or they can't see how they'd be able to track it in the future? All right. And then Will, were you asking for questions around supplies? What other supplies are being out at recovery community centers? Did you want more information on what that could be?
Sure. And any information on any of these really.
Does anybody else have any examples of outreach that's done within their organization? Oh, Stephanie, you're with us. I didn't see you sneak.
I know I came in late and then I would have my camera off. I think I understood the question. Are you just asking, are there like what types of outreach efforts do we do? Like,
Yes.
okay, most of our outreach is done at the county jail and at our transition center. So we don't do outreach, street outreach so much anymore. We kind of target to those two areas and then draw them back into our community recovery center. We are in the process because it's a newer partnership of we received some money on the side, the criminal justice side, to get funding for a program to track all of that data. So we don't have a great way to do it right now. And that's been a little bit challenging, but there's some kind of effort towards getting a database established for those that work that we're doing there.
Thanks, Stephanie. What about John?
Yeah, we do a fair amount of outreach, but a lot of it for me kind of falls into more of our low barrier day center category, where there is some crossover to more of a recovery center, but a lot of it's kind of on the ground, basic needs, initial services, those kind of things. Sometimes we see people transition more from a day center environment to more of a recovery center, but a lot of our outreach is really focused on those basic need services, shower, laundry, really day center type, low barrier day center services.
Yeah, we do outreach and with a couple different focuses. So we do outreach to community partners, and that can look like a lot of different things. It can look like going into treatment facilities. It could look like participating in any type of community event. But we typically are doing a lot of street outreach. And so the supplies that are distributed go right hand in hand with the street outreach that we do. And then we also do something that we call kind of in reach. And so that's a lot of the times they will kind of use the in reach term for treatment facilities or for the Oregon State penitentiaries that we go into. So we go into a couple of them, not all of them, because some of them are pretty big. And we do in reach for a lot of the work placement and professional development that we do. And the next kind of question I see there, Will, with the question mark around encounters, we actually collect those encounters separately. So we have encounters that kind of fall under a couple different kind of umbrella services.
Cool, thank you. And let me jump to this first slide here. To try and kind of like bring things like these are the measures we identified, try and bring it back to like the reports. You know, something that's going to come up in a later slide, I think that maybe some of us are already thinking about is how do we track the same measures, like logistically, right? Like what programs are we using? Are we tracking center level data different than, peer support data? With what software program are we tracking peer support data? And how does a point in time survey even get implemented? And those are all really good questions. And um, some of it might just be that it's not all going to happen at once. Maybe there's a report we could put out sooner, even though we're working on things in the background as more of a long-term efficient solution as well. Something that came up in conversation was that maybe if like we're together reporting on peer support, maybe just pick 3 or 4 items and focus on those 3 or 4 items that people are, we're kind of all tracking, and maybe we can tease those together. John.
Yeah, I just want to say I think, it's a very more than valid point as we're all collecting things differently. And I think one of the most important things we can do is have some standard definitions for an encounter, for a referral, for an engagement, for whatever the categories are we choose to report on, to have some real concrete definitions, because depending on the org or the level of service or whatever, we may have different meanings for different words. And I've seen that happen with statewide systems where they say we're going to track referrals. Well, then every county has a different definition for referral. And so then your data becomes really murky. And so I think regardless of how many things we decide, whether it's one or 1,000, to really have concrete definitions for what those data points mean, so that as we all work in our separate programs and areas of the state, we're collecting uniform data.
Thanks, John. Very, very well put. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense to add up all our encounters if we're tracking them differently.
Sometimes John puts things so well that all I can do is just nod my head or say agreed.
Hey, you're showing your support, Jared. That's
I support the peer company, man.
okay. So we had talked about measuring recovery capital. There are many, many ways to measure recovery capital. Just the assets someone has in their recovery. That's all we're talking about. Lots of different surveys and scales to do that measurement. I've come across like a dozen or more. One of the most commonly used is the BARC 10. Looks all funky on my screen. Sorry if I don't know what's going on here. Hopefully you can read the words. But it's just a 10-question survey, and it's pretty representative of, what other surveys measure as well. Like there's one survey that's like 50 questions long called the ARC 10. And this is the BARC. They just put brief in front of it and took off 40, came up with a 10-question survey. And it was shown to be just about as encompassing as the other one. And this sort of makes this way into that peer services, the enrolled participant measurement category. And there's it seems like there's been a lot of support for something like the BARC 10, and Steph and I were just talking a while ago, but it's like this is sort of seems like something that maybe someone that just enrolls in peer services, they're given this assessment or screening, and then maybe each time they come in, they're given it again, or depending on how many, like you don't want to give it to them 3 times a week or something, but maybe it's like once every 30 days or something like that, 60 days. And demonstrating, an increase in recovery capital is, by definition, like success in recovery center. Any thought? What comes to mind when y'all hear sort of implementing this new survey? What would it mean for your workflow, or what's going on in your center?
One thing that comes to mind, because we don't have this quite implemented into like our data tracking systems, like our EHR. And so one thing that I've been kind of like mulling over is like, is there a BARC 10 score that increases over time? Like, and that's the piece that maybe I'm just missing in this, is like we have the scale, right? 1 to 6. And then is there like a final score that identifies what that individual's current recovery capital is? And then we just track that number as they progress through services?
Yeah, I think there's a whole lot that can be done with it. Like, basically, I guess what that would be like scale of 10 to 60 if you added it all up and see how that changes over time. But also like it's probably good to see how individual questions track over time. But we could if this survey was administered, we could do stuff like that. And then I saw someone who did a bunch of like statistical analysis with the results, and it was really cool. I don't have that on hand to share, but like their statement, after their analysis was like recovery capital went up 7% or something in this time period. So yeah. Does this sound interesting? Does it sound attainable? Yeah, Stephanie.
I agree with John on the, having the definitions and just really being on the same page about being what's being collected, but I don't know. This is like a lot. Feels like a lot of data being collected. So I don't know if this is just an overarching list of what could be, and then we narrow it down. But like I just got out of the burn meeting and all the databases that they've added. And it's like I don't know. Like I try so hard to keep the focus on client-centered services. And anytime we're doing this much documenting or pulling of data, I mean, I'm happy to do it, but it's another staff member or it's another, it's 4 hours of somebody's week or whatever it is. But so anyway, just like do we need all of it? I mean, those are all data measures that we're probably all collecting, but kind of like what's the intent, who will be using it? I don't want to collect it if it's not being used. Like I have the ability to collect more data in the system that I currently use, but we don't necessarily do it because no one's technically asking for it right now. So as we create these expectations of these centers of what they're going to collect, I just want to make sure that somebody who's new and maybe not as sophisticated, like we're only 5 years in the making here, and some community recovery centers have been around for 12 and 15 years. And so it's just harder for, some folks on the front end to scale up. And so what is the expectation around that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I hear all those points. And yeah, I mean, I'd like to discuss that more and hear from anyone else that, is thinking along those lines as well. And, in conversation before this, like, yeah, I was like, yeah, there's a lot of reporting that already happens. Is this, is this, does it sound burdensome? I mean, that's a great question. I'd love to hear more on that. I, I hope it can be a case where, um, the main task isn't more reporting, but just more organizing what we are already reporting. I think that's hopefully where we can steer things. Yeah, go ahead, Steph.
Yeah, I have to agree with Stephanie. Even in the role I play as co-chair, I've often been like, "What is the point?" And so, from my perspective, we have all these different funding streams. A lot of the funding streams are coming from the same state office. Like, are we going to be able to present this to that particular government entity and say, like, this is what we would like the uniform reporting across all grant funding to look like? Or is this, as somebody else had mentioned, is this going to allow for funding specifically for recovery community centers? And I happen to be one of the recovery community centers where my center is not funded at all. And so, and we're young too. So we've only been operating for 3.5 years. And so we're still trying to, we're still in that time frame. Like, are we going to be viable? Like, where's the sustainability and what does that look like big picture? And so I just want to say that I absolutely agree with you. And, I wouldn't be sitting with integrity if I didn't name the fact that I get a little bit of anxiety about it too. Like, yes, we collect a lot of the data, but what can we use? Like, what is this tool going to provide for our recovery community centers as a whole? Or are we kind of like just throwing it out there, hoping that the state is going to be like, oh, this is great data collection. This is what we want to adopt. And is that a question you can answer, Will?
Is it something we can adopt? Is your question, or?
Yeah, I think the question is, what is the intent for the data? And is the intent of the data to find a streamlined data collection for grants coming out? And I don't know if I can just name it like this. I don't know the etiquette of the meeting, and so I don't know if I'm stepping on.
Go ahead.
But like, are we going to be able to take this to OHA and say, hey, you have multiple grant funding coming out of the organization? Is there a way to streamline the data collection so that each funding stream is receiving the same data? Because that's the benefit I could potentially see. And I don't know if there's other organizations on the call that have grants coming out of the same government entity and have 7 to 10 different reporting requirements. So when I think about benefits, I think, well, that could be a benefit. That's something that I would want to engage in for that streamlined data reports. And then the second piece that I think would be a benefit would this data collection then prove to another entity that these services are necessary and that recovery community centers should be funded.
To the second point, I think that is one of the goals, is showing community what recovery community centers are. When someone asks, having this document to hand to them and be like, this is what they are. This is the impact. The first question, I mean, the intent of the definition has always been so that we can have a common language with the participating agencies. I don't know how far into the future I can see with that, but that common language is that's what we found necessary. And then I think it followed that reporting to that newly found common language was what we felt would be most impactful. Okay. And we talked about the point in time survey. This is just sort of a brainstorm on the kind of things we can ask in a point in time survey. Just anyone who comes in the center, maybe you pick a week, and then that's when that survey is implemented. I know some people already do these too. Part of this discussion is having someone, someone mentioned the ADPC. I don't know if that's possible yet, but administer the survey and help out with that. Any questions or thoughts on that? Okay. I guess in all of this, there's some things to consider. You know, and I'll add to this any sort of reporting burden too that might exist. Definitely want to acknowledge what Stephanie said. Like what system is there for gathering center level statistics? Everyone kind of is probably doing different things, measuring the same thing, doing it in different ways. Um, and how do we reach some like agreed upon measures? For peer support tracking, some people are using different software than, the center level statistics and different software for different, centers. So how do we combine, um, measurements there? And how do we settle on just a few to get started with? And then there's a point in time survey, like I was just showing, like that's logistics all over the place, trying to figure something else like that. And yeah, what can the ADPC do to help out? Um, so move on to the last slide, which is just discussion. I just whatever's on your mind.
Hey, Will, this is Frank.
Frank?
So I think in Washington County, we fund a couple of recovery centers. We ask our providers, our recovery center directors, to provide specific metrics. Part of those metrics are required by OHA and Care Oregon and other funding sources. Having a couple of centers and having that data is powerful in a number of different ways. Having data from across the state would be so much more powerful. I know it's a burden for agency staff to collect this kind of data or as much data as it might seem. But if we could pare it down to the necessities and use that data, I think it could provide some powerful points to take to OHA or take to the legislature and say, look, this is what's happening in our state, and be able to support the work that we're doing and expand the work that we're doing. So that's I guess what I'm saying is that's our goal in Washington County. We're trying to upgrade the data that we're collecting in a way that will allow us to support and expand these services.
Thanks, Frank. Any other thoughts, next steps that come to mind?
I have a question. Is there a way to roll this out where maybe agencies that are willing to participate in the first round participate? We see the state's, a reaction, and then more recovery community centers can start It's really hard. So, once again, I'll just be transparent because I'm already collecting so much of the information for me to be here and say, oh yeah, this is no problem. I'll just throw it into a different document and, participate. I think it's really unfair because there could be organizations that aren't collecting this data. And then that is a huge administrative lift. With hopes that there'll be a positive outcome. And so I just want to be mindful of that, and kind of put that out there.
Stephanie, are you suggesting like a pilot? Like, could we figure out like a couple org pilot to figure out, what does it look like? What are some of the barriers or challenges? And then potentially what would expansion look like?
I mean, maybe a pilot. I was just thinking, like, how many organizations already collect this data that could participate in the collection and like publication of it. And then if there's organizations to hold everybody to the standard that they would be collecting this information might not be like realistic or fair. So who can participate? How could we get this information collected? And then potentially, how could we provide technical assistance? How could we provide tools to other organizations? Like, instead of, because I don't know every organization, every recovery community center in Oregon. And I just want to be really mindful of resources, availability, you know, FTE, administrative burden, just those different types of things. So I'm just trying to take it, like, how else could we get this started without, you know,
So we've got a ton of good information. Just acknowledgement, the support of this unified reporting, but also like a little bit of hesitancy, like what does that mean at the individual level? I wonder if I could offer as a next step that I make contact with current RCCs and just have a little discussion with everyone about it. And yeah, can bring back what I find. Ask people what they feel comfortable doing. Talk a little bit more about the project one-on-one. Stephanie.
I think when you're having those discussions, if you could also include some questions about what data would help the individual centers, because like I don't know how much outreach data is gonna help me. I mean, I get that it might help overall to say we, tried to get this many encounters, but it's not that I don't think outreach is important. I just don't know that, knowing how many outreach encounters were going on in Portland is going to impact my program. And so I don't know if once again, I'm just not sure if the intent of collecting the data is for the state to see what the impact is statewide, or if it's to help us determine where the gaps are, if it's to say, hey, this is really effective in helping the clients and moving them forward. And we can tell that from the data. I just don't know what the data is going to be used for. So instead of just like, here's a laundry list of everything we're collecting, like what's the intent of the collection and who's it going to? And then, if there were like maybe like 3 major components, then I could get on board a little easier. It just feels super overwhelming to have all of that without really knowing who's getting it and why. So I think if each individual recovery center kind of weighed in about, here's what I'm collecting, here's why I'm not collecting this, but here's what I haven't really thought of, because I know we all have blank spots too. So just like a little bit more definition of what the data would be used for.
Yeah, and I think on that first slide, we wanted to be sure that, we're acknowledging that each center has autonomy. This isn't, you know, I mean, centers are largely tracking what is useful to them already, right? I mean, so how do we show that to um, people outside of, our field? Yeah. Steph, you got anything else?
No, the thing that I'm just gathering is that we do need to have more conversation with a wider conversation with recovery community centers.
Yeah, well, I think we've settled on a lot of good questions and topics of conversation for, those talks. Okay, well, I guess we can do public comment.
Oh, is it my turn? Well, I'm sorry, I wasn't on the queue. Thank you for your presentation, Will. We do all appreciate the amount of work that you put into this. I know that it has been shared before that you love doing this work, but it isn't your primary role. And so we really just appreciate you going out of your way and then also not only wordsmithing, but putting it into a beautiful presentation. I appreciate color coding. So for me, I'm like, yes, thank you so much. My eyes can follow really directly. Okay. And so with that, as Will had said, we'll move to public comment. Do we have public comment? Anybody mention anything, Ashley?
We did not receive any written public comment.
No written public comment. Would anybody like to take a moment to say something? All right. Well, I guess with that, do we close the meeting?
Can you do that? Sure.
All right. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Will, can I talk to you real quick?
Sure.
Bye, guys.
You.
Hi, everyone. Hey, I just sent you an email about Stephanie Castaneda no longer being on the committee. I sent it a while back, like 3 weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks
Oh,
ago.
crap. Yeah, okay. I remember that now.
So my question was, we have culturally specific program, El Camino Seguro,
Yes.
and Stephanie is part of that, but she's in a very limited role and she
Okay.
would like to step off. And Moni Lepisco is my manager for that program, and I'd like to like flip them, but I just don't know if she needs to fill out an application, if it's not even
That would be
possible.
good. Yeah. If she could fill out an application, just let me know when it's done. Do you have the link?
No, if you could send me
Please
that, that'd
forgive
be
me.
helpful. I don't think I have it.
I think I must have sent it to Brian recently. Let me just check real quick.
I'm looking for it too. So whoever gets
Oh,
to it first.
there you go.
Wait, is it BRY or BRI? I don't know. Um, yeah, about the data, I hope it's useful to everyone. Like, hopefully, even like, well, if you don't do outreach, just you don't like if as defined. If you don't do it, you don't. That's fine. But I do hope like, um,
Yeah, I think for us, like we don't document our peer mentoring the way other people document peer mentoring is my
Uh,
thought. Like we have a database system that comes from the Recovery Cafe network, and we enter all of our enrollment forms, so we know who's enrolled in circles, and we ask a lot of questions about all the things, and then